it is quite great to celebrate the 62nd IPM convention. I regard this convention as a platform or an opportunity for us to share our knowledge and insights on human resource best practices globally. I came across an article that's been written by Liz Kislick. It's an article on change management. Liz is one of the lecturers at Harvard University. She says from time to time, every leader is confronted with change, and every leader has to deliver the news. That is hard for employees to hear, not to understand. And the news is obviously about change. Even in businesses that are actually thriving, doing very well, change is imminent. Just in terms of a case study, FP&M Seta is doing exceptionally well as one of the Setas, 21 Setas in the country. We are at 100% performance in terms of the targets that we sign with the National Skills Authority and Department of Higher Education and Training. We are at 93% of performance with the targets that we meet with the Auditor General of South Africa. However, we have had to also embrace the policy changes that hit the Seta landscape. Now, what then happens is that when you are faced with these policy changes, organizational and structural change should be expected. You cannot avoid that. Other areas that affect change would be in business acquisitions, would also be reorganization of businesses. These factors have got impact on employees at large, and the impact or reaction to these changes vary from one employee to another. People wonder, how will these policies or policy changes or these factors affect their jobs, affect their well-being, affect their families and careers? So how is it, or what is important for us as leaders to do in communicating or preparing for change? We have got, I think, one strategy that we all use, which is announcement. But often we announce 2 days before the change can happen. You know, in government, it's a very interesting territory. You must always be expecting change because change is imminent. Sometimes you are aware of it, but there'll be a lot of discussions that then take place that would then affect the implementation of the changes. Decisions could at times be taken abruptly, wherein people are advised that change has to happen in the next week, change has to happen in the next 2 days, change has to happen in the next month. What that means is that you need to understand that a position of authority or of power is a temporary position. You must always think about the next step. You must always think about how you can be able to adjust whenever there are changes. However, experts in change management advocate for proper planning. Proper planning that is accompanied by good communication. These crucial components, proper planning and communication, should be followed by a number of other interventions. As you plan, you need to have your communication strategy that will advise how the change is going to happen and how you're going to implement the change. Policy changes and factors such as organizational, structural, acquisitions or reorganization, if well planned, that is in terms of time and content, and if the necessary steps are taken, they can, by and large, become successful. One initial all-hands kind of a session, once off, doesn't necessarily assist with change. It does create a lot of disruption, business disruption, and discomfort. Therefore, next steps again become important, and what those are would be your individual or perhaps team conversations where people are engaged so that they can be settled or allowed to settle into the change that is about to happen. People must be afforded multiple opportunities for them to be able to engage, be allowed to allay their fears, and perhaps be part and parcel of the change or contribute towards the change that has to happen. And when business normally say, where do we find time? I think as HR practitioners, we need to be able to advocate for employees' wellness at all times. We will always find time if we plan, and we know that as part of the strategy for this year, these are the initiatives or strategic interventions that are going to take place. Planning should then embed such initiatives or activities. Management should be equipped with the necessary information, key and critical information that forms part of the change that has to happen within the organization, because we need to then utilize or capacitate them to can be able to assist the change process in such a way that employees are also again given an opportunity to vent, but critically they are getting the information from credible sources. A credible source as a vehicle through which information, critical information like change is delivered, is quite important. As an organization, if we are going to go through change, we need to ensure that we describe the plan as part of the content, but we must also describe the solution that as leaders we think would assist in implementing change, and also by so doing allow staff to make input. We need to personalize the impact and the resolution. Everyone would actually react differently to the change that is going to happen within the organization. Therefore, the impact, individual-based impact, should also be allowed in terms of ventilation and in terms of how, or the strategy to actually resolve that. We need to give affected people as many options as possible so that we can then have a meaningful process. What that does for employees is it gives them, it makes them feel more respected. It makes them feel that they are actually important in the organization. They also take pride as the staff members of that organization. And those characteristics are quite important in making sure that while change is happening, people still feel that their human rights are actually protected. We have a scenario of one company that was going through financial difficulties, and they got consultants involved to come and assist. But one of the things that made them successful was employee engagement, where they worked together in finding cost-cutting measures with employees and lasting solution. So employee engagement is just as another critical factor. As a country, we are actually faced with what we call fourth industrial revolution. How is it going to impact our organizations? how it's going to impact our policies, how it's going to impact the skills that we need as entities to can sustain and still grow our companies, still grow the industry, and still grow the country's economy. It talks about Fourth Industrial Revolution, talks about fusion of technologies. Looking at your own company, going through the document that clearly outlines the Fourth Industrial Revolution. What does it mean to you? What does it mean for your organization? And how we're going to make sure that we capitalize in this change in such a way that we are all winners at the end of the day. I have a daughter, I think she's 23 years old. Each time she comes home, she complains about working from the office. Mom, it's so boring. I don't know why must I work because I've got a laptop and I've got clients. I can easily get into my car, go to see clients and work from my laptop. That talks about change in terms of the age group that we are actually employing. We have got younger people that are now joining the workplace. What changes have we proactively and strategically implemented to accommodate those requirements? Are they called millennials? They have got a different mindset. What are the changes organizationally that we have implemented? Are we expecting them to come and disrupt the business? Or are we expecting them to come and find a conducive environment wherein they can be able to contribute fully to the business? You know, we have companies that have embraced principles of working from home, utilizing the technology that we have now. What have you done as a company? What factors would you then build into this work home? Is it working from home principle to make sure that that principle becomes successful? The work-life balance, some of us call it that. Or are we waiting for the disruption to happen and not be able to know how to address it, and therefore affect the bottom line? My advice to her is to always try and be outspoken at work. You know, there's nothing wrong with young people advising leaders, people that have been around. It's good to learn from the young people and try and understand their mindset. If the objective is to actually get the business thriving, I think it's important for us as leaders to remain open-minded. FP&M Seta, I think most of us seated here would know about the Setas. It's one of the 21 Setas. We are governed by a national skills development strategy. We have a number of interventions that we're working or we're supporting. This is one of such interventions where we're looking at strategically supporting the empowerment of HR practitioners nationally. We supporting industries such as clothing, textiles, leatherware, footwear. We also in the printing and print media, publishers. We support forestry, pulp and paper, leather and footwear. So those are the subsectors that we actually work with in terms of supporting skills development. I can comfortably say we've done very well in terms of the support and the mandate that we have, which is to facilitate skills development across those subsectors. The model is quite simple, and I think as HR practitioners, I should not be explaining the model. The Seta's model, we all know Seta's model comes from the levy, skills development levy, which goes through to SARS and back to the cities. Those are the funds that we then use to support skills development across the country. For me, as a leader, I think it is important to emphasize the importance of continuing to have credible, honest, trustworthy HR practitioners. HR practitioners with integrity. HR practitioners who will always remember the values that underpin human resources. So that in the workplace, employees feel comfortable coming to the HR office. Not an office where after you have actually opened up to the HR manager or HR personnel, your information is known everywhere. It is important to always ask ourselves, what are our values that underpin or govern the work that I do? With your work aligned to your values, HR will always be respected. In fact, for me, I always look at HR as a strategic partner of business. If you don't come and add value, you come in to be umam kopozi, then I don't need you in my business. HR should be a strategic partner to business, forward-looking, progressive, transformational, and making sure that when we sit down as business and look at the bottom line, we can succinctly, quantitatively be able to justify why we have HR personnel in business. On that note, I would like to thank everyone that is here today. And I hope that the discussions that are going to be unfolding going forward would be meaningful and value-adding to the business. I will be around, I will be participating in some of the commissions, and I think I'll also see you tomorrow at dinner. Thank you very much.